My name's Andrew, and I was addicted to heroin, cocaine, alcohol, marijuana, benzodiazepines, methamphetamines. So the first time I ever picked up was I was 8 years old, and I don't think there was any, reason why I picked up. I just think it was the immediacy of the substance. It was my parents' wedding, and everybody kind of was sitting at their table drinking champagne, and I had, the apple cider, sparkling apple cider, and I drank that, and I think it gave me a kind of a sensation of belonging, and I proceeded to go around to the rest of the tables and drink what was left over of everyone else's champagne. The effect that gave me, it allowed me to feel very comfortable. I was able to dance on the dance floor. I was able to sing in front of people. I was able to act the way that I had always felt but never had the ability to do so. It gave me what I always desired, was that freedom of self. The next time I picked up was, I was 13 years old, and I had just moved from one town in Massachusetts to another town. And I didn't really know anybody, and a friend of mine had invited some girls over, and I had stole some alcohol from my parents' liquor cabinet. And we went out in the woods and we drank that, and that night for me, a lot of magic happened. That was the first time I had ever kissed a girl, hung out with girls, and for a kid who grew up very shy and withdrawn from any kind of social society like that, that gave me kind of what I always had initially aspired to be. You see these kids in high school that, they have all the girls, they're hanging out with everybody, and, they're the life of the party. And I put that drink into my body, and, immediately I was that person. I was cool, I could talk to girls, I wasn't nervous, and I belonged, and for me that was, I had arrived. So basically I woke up that next morning, and I called my friend and said, that was awesome, let's do that again. And he said, well, have you ever smoked weed? And I said, of course I have. Really, I hadn't, and from that day until I was probably about 26 years old, I smoked pot every single day, because that would instantly give me the head change that I was looking for. And at about, if you fast forward through my life, drugs and alcohol are always there. The problems in school, getting kicked out of school, fighting, anger, resenting myself, family issues, all those things were very prevalent in my life. I was afforded an amazing education. I was sent to boarding schools, but the feeling behind that was, why are you kicking me out of your life? I'm already alone in a room full of people. Why are you pushing me out of my only nest, which was my family? So got into boarding schools, and basically that's where prescription drugs became readily available. I mean, this is the mid-90s, and Ritalin, it was the advent of Ritalin, and it's great taking it, but if you ever tried snorting it, it's even better. The effect is almost instantaneously, and for me, I couldn't get out of myself fast enough. So why wouldn't I just snort it? So I did. Basically, graduated high school, went to my first treatment center at about 18, lived on the streets in California for a while, got back east, and was living in downtown Boston, and that's where I found cocaine at the age of 18. But it would slow me down to the point where I couldn't continue to party as long as I wanted to, which was forever. So when I found out that I could do coke, and that would allow me to party and be extremely social without being sloppy, that was kind of like a magic moment for me. I was like, this is perfect. And I was like, oh no, I don't know how to hang out with girls. I don't know how to hang out with people. I'm completely socially inept. And then I kind of had that realization that, there was this thing. So I went and I stole some liquor from my parents' liquor cabinet, and we went out that night, and I literally started drinking, and almost instantaneously, I was there. I was able to, kiss a girl for the first time. I was able to be that cool kid, that person that I saw in class that had the friends, the girls, that social life that I so deeply desired inside, I found that, and that was, for me, I don't think I'd made the connection yet that was inside the bottle, but I knew it would give me that feeling, that feeling of, I can do this. I can do anything, And I remember waking up the next morning and being just like, wow, what happened last night? That was awesome. I need to do that again. Like, let's do that every day, And then I realized that I wasn't the only kid that felt that way. So I started stealing more alcohol and bringing, cigarettes and cigars and selling those at school. And that gave me, people started to look up to me. So then I started to get that like power. And those are the things that I really desired. Was I wanted the attention. I wanted that control. I wanted you to like me, and I would do whatever it would take for you to see me as that person I wanted to be. But I really wasn't that person, like it was all just a facade. It was all just a front. It was all just me, playing these games so I could get, girls to talk to me, people to like me, and give me that sense of power and control that I wanted. Because sitting in the back of the classroom, watching everybody else lead the life that I thought that I deserved was killing me inside. So I didn't care what it took to get what I wanted, whether it was alcohol or drugs or selling drugs or fighting, whatever it was for me to feel different than I felt in the back of the classroom alone, I would do whatever it took to get to that place. So growing up, I was a very angry kid. And I would get in a lot of fights. So, I always got good grades, but I would get in these fights and I would get kicked out of high school. So I was kicked out of 5 high schools in 3 years, and none of those were really directly related to drinking or doing drugs, but it was all those isms, that belief system. That's what this is. It's alcoholism. Similar to patriotism or communism. These are belief systems under which I would run my life. And it was those things that were attached to me, that those feelings that, my insides didn't match your outsides. But if I could do these things, it would make me feel different. So the way that I led my life was initially the progression. The substances were definitely there, but it was more the way that I felt, the feelings that I had, the way that I thought, the behaviors that I did, and the actions that I took. Those are the things for me that, even though I wasn't drinking and doing drugs every day, that is the, root of alcoholism. My parents sent me to my first treatment center, which was treatment experience, which was an outward bound program in northern Idaho, where basically you spent 30 days out in the wilderness kind of finding yourself. And that was an amazing experience. Immediately following that, I was transferred into a long-term treatment facility in Southern California where I didn't take it very seriously. I remember looking at, the writing on the wall, and by the writing I mean the steps and the traditions, and kind of walking myself through those and saying, I don't really need to do any of this. I'm 18 years old. I don't really have a problem. I just like to party and get fucked up. And I got my parents to send me a bus ticket, and I took that back across country. I reestablished myself out on the East Coast and was able to get an apartment and go to college, a local community college there, where I maybe went to class the first day, and then I found all those people that I needed to meet, right? The people just like me, people that like to drink, people who like to smoke, people who like to party. And I never went back to class. I withdrew probably in the first week, because at that point I didn't really take anything seriously. I didn't know what life was. I didn't know how to live a life. Basically, I had no real skills other than to, deceive and manipulate people into doing what I wanted them to do. And at that time, all I wanted people to do was to like me and help me get loaded. So I think at this point in my life, nobody's really saying you have a substance abuse problem. They're saying you have behavioral issues. You know, and I know I had behavioral issues. I mean, how many kids do you know get the opportunity to go to some of the best boarding schools in the country and then continuously get kicked out? You know, not many. And I spend, you know, the next couple years working and partying and doing lots of coke and drinking a lot, and then, you know, I kind of had a realization that I wanted a little bit more out of life, and I somehow got into college, university. Out in Colorado, so I moved my entire life out to Colorado, where I continued to do the same thing, you know, because geographics for me initially weren't very effective, because everywhere I went, there I was. You know, the problem still persisted because I was still the same person. And then, you know, started selling drugs again, started meeting the people I needed to meet, got myself into a fraternity because my type of behavior was socially acceptable, you know, and it was actually glorified. I could drink more than anybody. You know, I could manipulate women into doing what I wanted. I could do everything that everybody thought was exactly what I should be doing. But, you know, I continued to go to school, and when I was about 24 years old, I was always been a big athlete. I jumped off a cliff while skiing, intentionally, and I blew out my knee. And this is around the time that, you know, Oxycontin and Oxycodone had become very big, and I had been selling perks and OCs for a while. And I started taking them, and a doctor put me on Vicodin for about 9 months. And when I tried to take myself off that, I started to withdraw. And I went to see my drug dealer one day, and, you know, to pick up, and he was like, "What's wrong with you?" And I had the sniffles. And he's like, "Oh, you're withdrawing. So why don't you just take the oxys that you're selling?" You know, and it clicked for me. Why don't I just take the oxys that I'm selling? And I took those oxys, and instantly I felt better. You know, because at this point, I've been under the influence of drugs and alcohol continuously since 18. There was never a day off. I was always smoking weed, drinking, or doing coke, you know, because I could not stand who I was. I couldn't stand me. So I needed to escape that reality that was myself. So I took the oxys, and, you know, that was like that, oh, you know, kind of another moment that it was like all that shit, that remorse, that grief, that shame that I had just was taken off me, you know? And it was kind of a life-changing experience. Well, oxys became very expensive, and I moved into a house with a girl I'd been dating for a long time, and she said, "You know, you need to stop spending so much money on those drugs." And I said, "Okay, great." Well, you know, I knew what heroin was, obviously. I knew where to get it. I knew how much it costs. And, you know, as a businessman like myself, I like to save money and get the same effect, and heroin was exactly what I was looking for. You know, and I used heroin pretty continuously for a while, and one night, along with cocaine and benzos, you know, all those things were always in the mix. One night I was leaving my friend's house, and I'm not really sure what happened or where I went. I thought I was actually going to a parking lot to get high. And the next thing I know is there's a knock on my car window, and I immediately come to, and there's a tray of heroin and a tutor used to smoke the heroin in my other hand, and my forehead's on the steering wheel of my car. And I look to my left, and I look up, and there's a sheriff there.